Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Mandalorian review show. So we've finally reached chapters 7 and 8.
Yes,
the
sir.
last two episodes of The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
So what'd you think?
I think they were awesome. The last two were really good to me.
Not really good?
Right. Don't want to give it too much credit.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, we can't go that far now.
But no, I really think The Mandalorian was awesome. Episode 7 kind of takes us coming back to where we all kind of started from in the beginning of this show, where Carl Weathers' character, contacts the Mando and say, hey, you need to come back. We kind of have a way we can patch things up. And so then he's
now, let me ask you this. When you
up?
first saw this, did you believe him? I actually thought that he was on the level.
I did. I think that it was because I think he really, like I said, I think he really respects the Mandalorian for who he really is and what he does. And I think he's, an impressive bounty hunter for him. And I think he's always looking to have the best guy in his pocket. So if any way he could actually get him back on his side, he'll be all for it.
Right. And of course we find out later that he was going to double cross him, except because Baby Yoda healed him. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, well, then I changed my mind or whatever. So he was always planning on double crossing him, but it was so weird because usually I can spot that.
Well, now, was it that he wanted to double cross him or the other one's trying to?
No, he even said in the show, like, I was going to have, these other guys, like, shoot you, but he ended up shooting them because when Baby Yoda healed him and whatever, it's kind of like,
changed his mind or some stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been some theories around it about how because he was like using, the light side of the Force or whatever, it kind of
changed. It kind of had an effect on him.
Yeah, it had an effect on him, and I guess gave him the warm and fuzzies or something stupid, and
yeah,
did that. But yeah, he was planning on double crossing him.
Well, I think that, what was really sad, of course, was to see the Ugnaught die.
Yeah.
Yeah, Quill, man, he was actually really cool.
I know. I mean, I was actually really disappointed by that, to be honest. That was one of the things that, I mean, I get it, and I applaud the fact that, they actually did that in the show, because a lot of times, the cliched thing to do is to let the characters that everybody loves live for, season after season. And I remember one of the things that you and I loved about 24 was the fact that nobody was safe.
Right.
I mean, they'll kill everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that they're letting you know that they're going to do this in this show, too. That, hey, listen, don't get too attached because...
Yeah, it could definitely go south really quick. I think, and there's been a couple of times, where you think, and, I'm also... I mean, there's definitely some levity in this. Like one of the things I really did love, although it kind of went on a little too long, was the whole Stormtrooper conversation.
That was 8.
Yeah, well, that was in 8, yeah. What are we doing 7 and 8? So we just sticking with 7 right now?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll stick with 7. So
I mean, we could do, because we're doing 2, it's kind of like...
All right.
I don't necessarily want to go like a whole, break down every single scene, but, just give our overall thoughts and where we think everything's going, and a little bit about stuff that you liked about the episode, stuff you didn't like about the episode.
Okay, well, see, for 7, I really liked how that, once they kind of got pinned down, in that one place where it was like, all right, they wanted to bring the asset in. Of course, they kind of had to learn to work together as far as like, okay, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to, trick this guy because he's an Imperial officer? Of course, him even getting Gina Serrano to come back with him was cool, just because he knew that she hated the Empire so much. So he was like, when she
really
mentioned
glad,
that, like,
actually, that they did that. I mean, it was also good to see Quill go out on an adventure with them, and the whole reprogrammed IG droid was really cool too. And I really liked the scenes with that. Yeah,
especially the fact that he was like so adamant, like, well, if you want my help, you're going to take my nurse droid, and it's a good thing he did eventually. But
yeah, and of course, I also like the fact that they were talking about how. They went into the whole droids programming thing, and it kind of spoke a little bit to Mando's hatred of droids and what they did. It's like, listen, these droids are doing this because that's what they're programmed to do. Not all, droids in and of themselves aren't good or bad.
Right.
It all has to do with their programming.
Exactly. One of the underlying things I loved about the show, especially like the last couple of episodes, is that showing that how people change.
Yeah.
You know, this really is an episode really about change and about growth as a person. You know, so you're seeing Mando kind of grow from just being kind of like, you know, hey, this is just a job. This is what I do. It's nothing personal. To now he's actually formed a personal bond with, you know, what's known as Baby Yoda. And then now he's kind of had this bond with, you know, Gina Carano's character. And then now he's kind of built a friendship with Quill. And so it's kind of like he's becoming more humanized, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
And other people even around him have become more, I guess, they've changed just because of their encounter with the Mandalorian.
Yeah, I think that there's been a lot of really cool development with the characters in the show. Mm-hmm. You know, the relationships of the characters have actually developed, which is nice. I have to say, I had to laugh, and not only did I have to laugh, but I was kind of surprised when Baby Yoda force choked.
Oh man, that was
Kara. You know, it was like,
yeah, that's her name. Yeah,
ooh, a little dark side in there.
Well, no, the funny thing about that,
I know he was defending.
Yeah,
his
that's
friend.
that was awesome because he was just like, no, stop, because you know he's a child, he doesn't know, he just thinks that you know she's trying to hurt him, and
right.
He's like, no, it's not what it looks like.
Well, and I think it's funny, too, because, you know, they talk about how, you know, there were rumors, and it's like, well, I've seen stuff like this before, and, you know, and then, of course, we'll get to it, but in 8, they expound on that a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I really thought that it's cool how they're not just giving every bit of information out at once. I mean, one of the reasons why we call it Baby Yoda, obviously, is because we don't know.
Yeah, the child's
name. It's called the child or the asset or...
You're right.
You know, we don't really know that much about it, so you know we can only say what we can say.
Well, one of the things I've often wondered about Baby Yoda is that like how much control does it really have? Because you know, with the baby being that young, but it's still 50 years old, so it's just like maturation wise, like how does the Force grow with different species? Because you know, as a human, you know, like okay. Infants probably accidentally use the Force or something like that, but it seems like he knows what to do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like how far advanced?
True, because first of all, he's Force choking Kara.
Yeah. Right?
Because he knows he wants to defend his father figure, basically.
Yeah.
He's healing Grief. I think that's his name.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting Carl Weathers' character name.
Grief. Yeah.
So he's healing him.
And then he even, the first time when he used it, when he saved Mando the first time.
Right. So, I mean, it seems like you're right. There's a definite conscious effort.
Yeah, like.
You know, to use it. Like, it's not just some accidental, you know, use of it based on an emotion. I mean, there's control, there's thought behind it.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. It's like, okay, you're essentially like this toddler.
Yeah.
How are you?
It's not even a toddler, it's like an infant. It's like.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, how are you
it can't
able
walk,
to do
so yeah.
Yeah, it can walk. And
yeah.
It's kind of toddlerish.
Yeah, it does escape off ships.
You know,
which is
I would
also
say
amazing.
like a 2-year-old maybe.
Yeah.
In human terms.
Yeah, probably.
But it's so weird to me, you know, how this whole thing, like in its development, that's a really good point. It's like, okay, all species use the Force, I guess, at different points, but this particular species seems to have a pretty good grasp and pretty good control on it. Right away.
The other thing I've noticed too, and I don't know if many people really picked up on it, but of course, you know, whenever he uses the Force, you know, especially depending on what he's doing, but it tuckers him out.
Yeah.
So that kind of just shows you, it kind of correlates when you look at things like in The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, how like if you exert too much energy, it will like wear you out to that degree.
Oh, absolutely, man. He's taking that Thanksgiving nap after he uses
yeah, because that one time he was still asleep for like the whole episode.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like
I mean, it takes a lot out of him, and it further demonstrates his apparent love or caring about the Mandalorian because, I mean, if you think about it, he's willing to put himself through that. He knows it's going to sap him, you know, completely to like tap him out power-wise and just energy-wise, but he's still willing to expend that to protect him.
Now, because of that, do you automatically assume that it's light side?
Well, that's... you know, and of course, in some of our podcasts, we've even gone into the discussion Like, what was that one podcast we did where we talked about the entire balance of the Force? Like, that's all we talked about pretty much was, at what point does it move into light side, dark side? And then even then, you have the way the Jedi use the light side, the way the Sith use the dark side. But when
do you start?
When is it really moving into that? Is it intent? Is it a specific power? Because, we talk about Force choke, and we know that Luke used it.
Yeah.
And we don't really get any hint that he was angry.
Mm-mm.
There just seems to be things that are typically dark side powers, but not necessarily dark side intent.
Well, yeah, I think what it is that when you use the Force, I think it really is based upon your intent. It's kind of like no different
if
than
you're calm or if you're angry.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like I guess it's kind of like any form of fighting anyway. Like, if you're using a technique for mere defense or you're using it for aggression, I think that's where it lies, really, dark or light. It's more so like you can use it's no different than.
But then that brings up a good point, though, because we're talking essentially about a creature that's somewhere between an infant and a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
How much intent? I mean, I guess he has some intent, or is it more instinct, or you know what I mean? It's like
true.
It's a good point. It's something that they're going to have to explore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then after it moves on to that, of course, we get the whole siege.
Yeah.
At the Imperial compound, I guess.
Yeah, the whole brigade pretty much shows up.
And I was kind of surprised that they killed off Werner Herzog's character this too.
Yeah. Well, I think I see where it's going.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I love the Moff Gideon character.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, I thought he's actually one of the coolest new characters.
Like, he's like my favorite guy. Yeah, like, just simply because, I mean, I was wondering when he was going to show up.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, okay, like, we saw him, like, in the trailers and stuff, so I'm wondering, like, okay, when is he going to really show up? And when he shows up, man, it's... Like, I just love his regal. He kind of has like
he has a little bit of a Dooku thing going.
Vibe going with him, but
it's kind of like Dooku and Thrawn rolled into one.
Exactly.
Guy.
Exactly.
That's kind of what he reminds me of.
Yeah, and he just. I've always loved his position. Whenever he plays a leader in any type of movie, he always brings that like command of like gravitas with him, and I always love that about Giancarlo. So. When Gideon shows up, it's like, yeah, now what is he going to bring? And
you could tell right away that he's not like the typical, there's something more to this guy.
Yeah. He's not your average.
He's not your average, Imperial officer or even a Moff or a Grand Moff, which he obviously hadn't made it to that yet. But I mean, it's going to be interesting to see the story go on. So, we leave off in 7 where they basically wiped out this whole little Imperial compound, and those guys are pinned down.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're about to go into 8.
Yeah.
So now you felt the Stormtrooper conversation was too long.
Well, I mean, it was cool.
I would like to see an entire show based on these guys, because to me, it finally humanized. It was very similar, actually, to that New Hope scene where they're talking about the... new speeder thing that came out, and they're like, well, I don't know. What do you think about it? When Obi-Wan was sneaking around.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I thought it was cool. Like, I just felt like eventually it kind of got into a little bit of that goofy kind of humor, which I guess you would kind of think, like, that's probably what would actually happen, honestly.
Exactly.
But, I mean, it just kind of like...
And it felt very Star Wars to me.
But a little bit of, like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, it was some kind of shocking moments even within that. Like, even though it was meant to be playful... Like, he's like, I don't know. He's like, shut up. And he's hitting Baby Yoda. Like, you kind of, it kind of made me mad.
It made me mad, and it jarred me a little bit.
Exactly.
Like, you see how cruel these guys can be.
Yeah.
And there was a part of me that was like, yeah, keep playing with the little piranha. It's like, you're going to keep hitting him on the head, and he's going to come out of that box, like, literally.
Exactly. I mean, that's why I even love when, like, he bit his finger.
That was the best.
Baby Yoda wasn't playing, but what I did find that was hilarious, and I thought this was absolutely brilliant, is when they kind of, like, set that can or whatever thing, they kept trying to shoot it, and they kept missing it. That was absolutely brilliant because it's like they can't hit anything.
Well, but what was funny about it, though, was it was really more of an inside joke because a lot of people on the internet thought that was at face value. What they didn't hear was when he was like, oh, yeah, the gun, there was actually something loose or wrong with the gun. But the idea was, yeah, they wanted to put the inside joke of the stormtroopers can't hit anything.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, was it episode 6? The one where it was kind of like that Ocean's 11 kind of thing? With when
they went on that barge, that prison barge.
Yeah, and they ended up, and it was like the one guy said something like he was an Imperial sharpshooter, and he was like, "Well, that doesn't impress me." He was like, "Well, I'm not a stormtrooper," or something like that, you know. They've been actually making these references a lot, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd have to say the other funniest moment has to be where when Grief was all like, well, do your, little thing. And
magic hands.
Yeah, the magic hands. And then, and then all Baby Yoda does is just wave at him or whatever. I thought that was hilarious.
Yes, magic hands. Yeah, that was hilarious.
Like, use your magic hands. I mean, it's that kind of writing and that kind of really understanding. You could tell these guys are fans because they really understand the type of humor. They really understand what it is that makes up the DNA of Star Wars. And I think that, in a lot of ways, I think they actually succeed where the movies have failed lately.
Yeah, definitely.
Other than maybe Rogue One. And you know what, Solo.
Solo really did have it,
Yeah,
too.
I rewatched Solo over the holiday break, and I liked it even more than I did when I saw it the first couple of times.
Okay.
Because it really felt like a fun Star Wars movie. I really liked the characters of it. I liked the way everybody was portraying their roles. And, it was just really, it actually made me want a sequel to that movie because I really think they can go somewhere interesting with it. And that's how I feel about Mandalorian because, not only do you get more really great scenes with Moff Gideon, you get even more bonding with all the characters like Grief and Cara, and there was a lot of really weighty stuff, like the whole scenes between Mandalorian and IG-11.
Yeah, I was about to say those scenes were really kind
of when he was like, "No, we need you," and it's kind of like it's a droid, and he's actually telling a droid like, "No, don't sacrifice yourself. Be part of our team."
Right. To see, and once again, that humanizing and him changing as a character, like from what we see from day one. Where he's just like, look, you can come in hot or cold. I really don't care.
Right.
To now he's kind of like warming up to just people and things, and even the things that he hated the most, and
yeah, exactly. And I think that besides that, the whole idea that he's learning to trust the droid now, the fact that we finally got to see him unmasked.
Yeah, that was a big
and he
thing.
was kind of like, well, I mean, no living thing has ever, done it. Well, I'm not a living thing. And I mean, I thought they really handled everything well.
Yeah.
They answered some questions. We got his real name. We got all this stuff. But they did it in ways that they didn't feel shoehorned into the episode.
Yeah, or they just gave it to you. Like it wasn't earned, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I even like the way, the fact that, Quill basically like, no, he's programmed, to be a nurse droid, and like you're really going to need him. And of course he really did need him, because he actually had this whole Bacta spray. Well, just like,
and
that was sweet.
That was, I mean, it was really cool to see this droid saving his life. And I mean, there was a lot of really emotional heartstring moments where you didn't expect to get them.
Now, the lady who makes the armor and everything, what did you think about her?
I'm wondering if that's actually Bo-Katan. I thought that she was amazing, but I'm beginning to wonder if that's not going to be a reveal at some point.
Because she wasted those stormtroopers without even any real weapons.
There's a lot of little hints that maybe she could be. Mm-hmm. And the fact, of course, the big reveal is that Gideon has the Darksaber.
Well, yeah, so...
And to see the Darksaber, in live action is
sweet.
Just, mind-blowing to me.
Now, here's the thing. So, here's what a lot of people, and I could see this, and if this is true, this will be sweet, is that Gideon is really trying to become the new Vader. And so that's why he wants Baby Yoda, because he wants to extract it to use the Force. And actually, he already has the dark saber, so it's like, all right, all I need is like Force abilities, and then I can basically, because really up until that point, and we don't know how much Gideon knows, but he doesn't know anything about the Emperor as far as we know. Because most people around that time, really very limited people had access or really knew. They knew of the Emperor, but they didn't know who the Emperor really was.
And they certainly didn't know he was a Force user.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like when I say who he really was. Like,
yeah, the idea was that Darth Vader was kind of the face of...
Right, and everybody knew Vader had the Force. And everybody knew, okay, this guy's walking around with a lightsaber. He can choke you from like across, systems and whatnot. But the Emperor was always in the shadows and always that mystery. So... you just knew he was holding Vader's leash, so he had to be powerful, but you just didn't know how. So Vader being kind of like the face of everything,
I can see
especially
that.
The military side of things.
I can see that. And
I can see why Gideon is really like,
and it would be really interesting to me to see, because, Luke Skywalker is just freshly off of, by now he's probably like a way more powerful Jedi than he was in Return of the Jedi, because this takes place 5 years later.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably starting to... I don't really know when he started his whole Jedi Academy thing. It didn't seem like it was for a while.
Yeah, he probably had to kind of get some refresher courses himself.
Yeah, I don't think it was like the expanded universe where it's kind of like, okay, after the credits rolled on Return of the Jedi, he's out there running around trying to find, Force-sensitive kids or whatever. But... either way, Gideon has to know.
About Luke?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, see, that's...
maybe, though, not entirely. Maybe he only knows him as, like, the guy that blew up the Death Star and...
Yeah, but see, once again, I guess it just depends on where he was stationed, how things were traveled, because, there was that scene, like, in Return of the Jedi where, of course, when Luke turned himself in, he was armed only with this. He had a lightsaber. Most people pretty much knew what that was.
True.
So if that got around, like, oh yeah, this Jedi showed up.
Well, just like any of his stuff, all the new canon stuff I'm talking about, a lot of the comics and books and things like that, it filled things in. I think people pretty much knew Luke Skywalker was trying to be like a new Jedi kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they might have known that. So if Gideon's trying to be like the new Vader, he's got to know that Luke is going to try to face him at some point.
Well, then not only that, but I think it's more so... Gideon is probably looking at it from the standpoint of if he's going to be, because if you're looking at it from the military perspective, Tarkin's been gone. He died on the first Death Star. So then Vader pretty much assumed control over the military at that point. From Empire on, he was pretty much... Well,
yeah, but I mean, you did still have Grand Moffs.
You had Grand Moff, yeah.
Not
saying that, but I'm just saying, like, he kind of was like the guy that kind of just made sure everybody did what they were supposed to do. Because he was like, choking everybody out like every 30 seconds.
Well, it's just going to be interesting though, because Gideon, the Empire's in rags pretty much. I mean, it's not like there's a whole lot left. So it's gonna be interesting to see where they take even these Imperial remnants, because obviously the Empire is not. They've just broken off into these fragments.
Yeah.
So they're going to be vying for power.
And the biggest thing that, they've always said was just like, even in A New Hope, it's like fear is what's going to keep all the systems in line, is fear. So it's like if you have no one to really fear, like you have the Empire is pretty much fallen, but if you got a new guy that's basically the new Vader rising up.
Well, that's the thing though that's funny is because you have Gallius Rex, you have all these people that we've been reading about in the new canon that... because they're, the Aftermath trilogy deals pretty much with the same time period as this. So it's really going to be interesting to see how they match all that stuff up.
Indeed.
We'll have to see. But what about you guys? What did you think of, Chapter 7 and 8 of The Mandalorian? Is it, now that we have the whole series, at least Season 1,
right?
Are you guys like, yeah, Star Wars is reborn, or are you guys like, I don't know, I'm kind of disappointed? Let us know in the comments below. We would love to hear from you guys. Let us know what you think. All right? I think that's going to wrap it up for our Mandalorian review. Of course, look out for more review shows. We're planning on doing book reviews. We're going to do, if they obviously they got the Obi-Wan series coming up. We got Cassian Andor.
Yep, and there's some other news because the Clone Wars is coming back too.
Clone Wars is coming back, so we'll probably do another review show, maybe on the Clone Wars.
Yep.
But as far as the Mandalorian goes, see you guys in season 2.